My name is Sofia, and my story is a tapestry woven with threads of sorrow, sacrifice, and the raw, unfiltered emotion of a heart that dared to defy. I was 22, a fresh graduate clutching a degree in literature, my head filled with the poetry of mystic verses and dreams of a life painted in bold, romantic strokes. My parents, pillars of tradition in our tight-knit community, had a different vision for me, one of stability, honour, and a carefully arranged marriage to a distant cousin, a quiet man who owned a shop. He was kind, predictable, the kind of man who would ensure I never wanted for food or shelter. But his world felt like a cage, and I yearned for something wilder, something that set my soul ablaze. Deep inside, I felt a restlessness, a quiet ache for passion that no arranged match could fulfill, a fear that my life would slip away in quiet conformity. Love found me unexpectedly at a literary festival. The venue buzzed with poets reciting verses, intellectuals debating, and artists sketching fleeting moments. That's where I met Karim, a lanky, unshaven artist with charcoal-stained fingers and eyes that burned with an intensity that made my heart stutter. He was 30, a drifter who sold portraits on the roadside, his life a patchwork of poverty and passion. His family had lost everything in devastating floods, leaving him to fend for himself in a world that rarely rewarded dreamers. We spoke for hours under sprawling trees, our words tumbling over each other, poetry of love and loss, the weight of expectations that suffocated us both. As he described his sketches, his voice softened, revealing a vulnerability that pulled at me. My chest tightened with an unfamiliar warmth, a mix of excitement and terror, as if I was standing on the edge of a cliff, ready to leap. He shared stories of his childhood, of nights spent hungry under a leaking roof, and with each word I felt my defenses crumble, tears welling in my eyes at the raw honesty that mirrored my own hidden longings. I confessed my quiet rebellion against the life my parents had scripted for me, my voice trembling, and in that moment a spark ignited. Hope, desire, and a profound connection that left me breathless. My parents sensed the shift in me almost immediately. My mother, with her sharp intuition, noticed the way my eyes lingered on the horizon during family dinners, my mind wandering to stolen glances and whispered conversations. "Who is he?" she demanded one evening, her voice trembling with fear, her hands clutching the edge of the table as if to steady herself. When I confessed about Karim, her face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. "He's a nobody, Sofia. He'll drag you into the dirt with him. Think of your future, your honor." Her words pierced me, a wave of guilt crashing over me, making my throat tighten. I wanted to scream that love wasn't about status, but instead I felt a sob rise, my heart torn between her pain and my passion. My father, a stern teacher who valued respect above all, was unyielding. He slammed his fist on the table, his eyes blazing with anger and unspoken fear. "Marry him and you cut yourself off from this family. We will not watch you ruin your life." The room fell silent, heavy with the weight of his disappointment, and I fled to my room, collapsing on the bed, tears soaking my pillow as waves of doubt and defiance warred within me. Their words were like knives, carving deep wounds of uncertainty. But Karim's love was a fire that consumed my doubts, warming the cold void their rejection left. We met in secret, hidden cafes, moonlit rooftops where we whispered promises. Each rendezvous was a stolen breath of life, my heart racing with adrenaline and joy. One night, as we sat under the stars, Karim took my hand, his touch sending shivers through me. "We don't need their approval," he said, his voice fierce with conviction, yet laced with a tremor of his own fears. "We'll make our own destiny." I leaned into him, tears of overwhelming happiness blurring the night sky, feeling for the first time truly seen and cherished. The sacrifice began with small betrayals. I lied about attending study groups, instead slipping away to meet Karim in cramped tea stalls or quiet parks. Each lie eroded a piece of my conscience, leaving me with a gnawing guilt that twisted my stomach, but the thrill of his touch, the way his laughter felt like sunlight piercing storm clouds, made it worth it. I felt like the heroines in my beloved novels, defying convention, choosing love over duty, my emotions a whirlwind of exhilaration and quiet shame. When Karim proposed, it wasn't with a diamond, but with a ring. He'd twisted from copper wire, its imperfections mirroring our reckless love. We were in a secluded spot, the air thick with anticipation. He knelt before me, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "Marry me, Sofia," he said, his voice breaking under the weight of the stars above us, raw with emotion that mirrored my own pounding heart. "Let's build a world where no one can touch us." I said yes, my heart pounding with equal parts, fear and exhilaration pulling him close as sobs of joy escaped me, our embrace a fortress against the world's judgments. We eloped in the dead of night, driven by a taxi driver who asked no questions, to a small place of worship. An old man with kind eyes married us in a quiet ceremony. The only witnesses, the flickering lamps and our trembling hands. There were no joyous celebrations, no music or flowers. Just us, two souls defying the world. As we exchanged vows, my voice quivered, a mix of elation and terror washing over me, tears streaming down my face at the enormity of what we were doing. That night, in our humble room, we held each other close, whispers of forever mingling with my silent fears. My parents' warnings echoed in my mind, a shadow over our bliss, but I pushed them away, convinced that love would conquer all, my heart swelling with hope even as doubt whispered in the dark. The early days of our marriage were a fragile paradise. We rented a one-room apartment in a crumbling building, its walls stained with time, its single window overlooking a noisy street. I found work tutoring children, their eager faces a reminder of the innocence I'd left behind, filling me with a bittersweet joy as I shaped their futures while mine felt so uncertain. Karim sold his sketches at local markets, his talent undeniable, but his success inconsistent. Some days he'd come home with enough money for a proper meal, and we'd sit on the floor, eating with our hands, laughing until tears came, our love bubbling over in shared glances and tender touches. One evening, as we danced clumsily in our tiny space to music from an old radio, I felt an overwhelming surge of contentment. Burying my face in his shoulder, whispering, "This is everything I dreamed of," my voice choked with emotion. Other days we shared scraps, laughing through the hunger, our love a shield against the world. At night we made love on a mattress so thin I could feel the floor beneath, but his warmth made it feel like a palace, each caress igniting sparks of passion that left me trembling with fulfillment. "This is freedom," he'd whisper, his fingers tracing my spine, and in those moments I believed him, my heart overflowing with gratitude and love. But freedom is a fleeting illusion. Sorrow crept into our lives like damp rot, slow and insidious. Karim's art didn't sell as he'd hoped. Buyers dismissed his work as derivative, preferring mass-produced prints over his soulful sketches. His frustration grew, his once gentle demeanor hardening, and I watched helplessly as the man I loved slipped away. One afternoon, he returned from a market empty-handed, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. I approached him cautiously, my heart aching at the defeat in his eyes. "It'll get better," I murmured, wrapping my arms around him, but he pushed me away, his voice laced with bitterness. "How?" "With your pity?" The words stung, tears pricking my eyes as rejection twisted in my gut, a foreshadowing of deeper cracks. The first argument came 6 months in when I used my savings to cover our rent. "I'm not your charity case," he shouted, his voice shaking the thin walls, his face contorted with rage that masked his shame. I flinched, not from fear, but from the realization that the man I loved was unraveling. My own tears falling as I pleaded, "We're in this together," my voice breaking with desperation. The sacrifices deepened. I stopped answering my mother's calls, her voice cracking with pleas to come home, each ignored ring a dagger of guilt that left me curled on the floor, sobbing in silence. My father sent letters, each one a mix of anger and heartbreak, warning me of the life I'd chosen. I burned them in the sink, the smoke curling like my fading resolve, ashes mingling with my tears as regret began to fester. Friends drifted away, their invitations replaced by pitying glances. "The girl who ran away," they whispered, as if my love was a scandal to be gossiped about, isolating me further and amplifying my loneliness. I poured myself into work, taking extra tutoring jobs to keep us afloat. But the strain showed, my cheeks hollowed, my eyes dulled, exhaustion weighing on me like a shroud. Kareem's moods grew darker. He started drinking cheap liquor, coming home sullen and distant, his absences leaving me pacing the room, anxiety clawing at my chest. Our nights, once filled with passion, became silent, the space between us a chasm that echoed with unspoken hurts. The first blow came a year into our marriage. I'd worked a double shift to buy medicine for his recurring fevers, a legacy of his malnourished childhood, my body aching from fatigue but driven by love. He found the receipts and exploded, his eyes wild with fury. "You think I'm weak? That I can't take care of us?"
His hand struck my cheek before I could react, the sound sharper than the pain, shock freezing me in place. I tasted blood, but the betrayal cut deeper, a sob ripping from my throat as I staggered back, tears blurring his remorseful face. He fell to his knees, sobbing, blaming the alcohol, the rejection, the world that refused to see his worth. "I'm sorry, Sofia, please," he begged, his voice hoarse with regret. And I forgave him, pulling him close through my own tears, because love, I told him myself, meant weathering the storms, even as fear lodged in my heart. But the storms kept coming, each one eroding my spirit a little more. I sacrificed more, my grandmother's gold jewelry, heirlooms from a lineage of strong women, sold to pay off debts from Kareem's failed attempt to start an art supply business. As I handed them over, a wave of loss washed over me, tears falling onto the counter, mourning not just the items, but the pieces of my past I was giving away. I skipped meals so he could eat, my body shrinking while his resentment grew. Hunger pangs mingling with emotional emptiness, he began disappearing for days, claiming he needed space to find inspiration. But I found traces of another woman, lipstick on a shirt collar, the faint scent of perfume that wasn't mine. Doubt gnawed at me like a relentless ache, nights spent alone, curled in bed, tears soaking the sheets as jealousy and insecurity consumed me. Yet I clung to the memory of our elopement, telling myself this was a test, that our love would endure, whispering affirmations through choked sobs. The truth unraveled on a rainy evening. Hidden in his sketchbook, I found letters, elegant handwriting, perfumed paper, words of adoration from a wealthy patron who frequented the art scene. She promised him sponsorship, exhibitions, a way out of poverty. But the letters spoke of more, nights spent together, plans for a future that didn't include me. My hands shook as I read them, a guttural cry escaping me, the room spinning with betrayal. When I confronted him, he didn't flinch, his voice cold as ice. "She sees my potential," he said, devoid of the warmth I once knew. "You're holding me back, Sofia. You and your endless sacrifices." The words were a blade, severing the last threads of my hope, and I collapsed to the floor, sobs racking my body. the pain so acute it felt like my heart was being torn apart. I had given up everything: my family, my dignity, my dreams, for a man who saw me as an anchor, not a partner, the realization crashing over me in waves of anguish. I left that night, my suitcase stuffed with the remnants of my life, a few clothes, a tattered book of poetry, and a heart shattered beyond repair. I wandered the streets, the rain masking my tears, each step heavy with despair, until I collapsed outside my parents' home, drenched and broken. My mother opened the door, her face a map of grief and relief, gasping at the sight of me. She pulled me inside, her arms a sanctuary I didn't deserve, holding me as I wept uncontrollably, her own tears mingling with mine in a flood of shared pain. My father stood in the doorway, his silence heavier than any lecture, his eyes filled with a sorrow that mirrored my own. "We warned you," he said finally, his voice soft with pain, cracking as he pulled me into an embrace. "But you're still our daughter." They took me back, their forgiveness a lifeline that mended some fractures but left others raw, the reunion a bittersweet torrent of relief and regret. Kareem faded into obscurity. I heard rumors later. She grew bored of him. His art never found its audience, and he drifted from one bottle to another. But my sorrow was my own, a deep well of regret for the years I'd lost, nights spent staring at the ceiling, tears flowing as memories haunted me. I had disobeyed my parents for a love that was a mirage, sacrificing my youth, my heritage, my peace. Now, at 28, I rebuild. I teach again, my classroom a refuge where I pour my heart into shaping young minds, finding solace in their laughter that eases my lingering ache. I write poetry late at night, verses of caution and resilience, warnings to those who might follow my path, each word a cathartic release of pent-up emotion. My parents' home is a quiet haven, but the walls echo with the ghosts of my rebellion, reminders that stir quiet tears. The lesson, carved into my bones, is this: love is a fire that can warm or destroy. I chose its flames over the steady glow of my family's wisdom, and it left me burned, the scars a constant throb of what was lost. My tears have dried, but they've left marks, reminders of a love that promised freedom but delivered chains. Yet, in the wreckage, I've found strength, emerging from the ashes with a wiser heart. I am no longer the girl who ran away, but a woman who survived, piecing together a life from the fragments of her mistakes, allowing myself to feel the full spectrum of emotions that shaped me. The story doesn't end in triumph, but in the quiet courage to keep going, to love again. Not with reckless abandon, but with the wisdom born of sorrow, embracing the vulnerability that makes us human. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and subscribe for more tales of love, loss, and redemption. Share your thoughts below. Have you ever faced a choice between love and family? Let's start a conversation.